Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about another pioneer of horror. Last week I talked about Edgar Allan Poe, but this week I want to talk about this other guy, HP Lovecraft. Now, HP Lovecraft was actually influenced by Edgar Allan Poe. At the risk of starting a major debate, I am not, let me just push this right out here at the forefront. I am not a scholar of literature. I'm not a literary scholar. I'm not extensively studying Poe. The same is true of H.P. Lovecraft. The same is true of any literary period of time. I'm a reader. I'm a reader and I'm a writer. And I know that I might be the only writer that doesn't really want to study or literature or be a literary scholar. I read for enjoyment. After starting BookTube, I purchased this H.P. Lovecraft anthology. I got it for about $7 and I just wanted to have it on my shelf. However, I'm not the fan of H.P. Lovecraft that I am of Edgar Allan Poe. Now, before anybody freaks out, it's not because H.P. Lovecraft is a bad writer or because the stories are lame. It's nothing to do with that. In fact, I have a really sound appreciation for H.P. Lovecraft and the effect that he's had on the horror genre and science fiction. It's just not my kind of horror. It's not, his subject matter is not the kind of subject matter that I find particularly scary. If you don't know much about H.P. Lovecraft, join the club. No, I'm just kidding. I know a little bit about him. He is very responsible for this entire system or world or mythos that authors continue to employ in work today. He is most famous, of course, for the Call of the Cthulhu, and his stories revolve around ancient or alien beings. Or think of it this way: the Cthulhu mythos that H.P. Lovecraft invented and developed and conceived. It's kind of like a mythological system where humans are the creation of, or they're servants to, more elite beings or more elevated beings, and those beings are very creature-esque. They're old gods, but they're very alien-like and tentacled, and it's creature horror. And there are two types of people, right? There are those that find any creature horror to be very scary because I think they're more creative than me. I think they have a better imagination than I do. It's the possibility, like, people can imagine the possibility of these beings or these creatures or these gods existing, and so the stories have a more profound effect and are creepier and scarier and more terrifying than other stories. I fall into the other camp where I don't have that great of an imagination. I don't become immersed in fantastical worlds. I've talked before about how I'm not a really big fantasy reader, how I need realism in my stories. I need my stories to be rooted in the actual world that I see every day. Psychological horror, body horror, like things like that are more terrifying to me. That said, again, I do have a very sound appreciation for Lovecraft and Lovecraftian work. Since being on BookTube, I've read two books that I would specifically say are very Lovecraftian or are reminiscent of Lovecraft's work. The first is one that a lot of people love, and it's called Bird Box. Bird Box revolves around the existence of a creature that, if human beings see this creature, they go insane. And if you listen to interviews by Josh Malerman, the author of Bird Box, he mentions jump-starting that book based on the idea of infinity, or what happens when humans attempt to understand something that cannot be contemplated. That Bird Box is actually mostly about human beings encountering something that they cannot process, something so outside of the realm of understanding that they go crazy, that they become homicidal and suicidal, and Lovecraft is known for that as well. There are villains or beings or creatures in Lovecraft's work that aren't even described because they're supposed to be unable to fathom. They're supposed to be impossible for the human mind to comprehend. So that is why to me, Bird Box falls more into the realm of Lovecraftian type horror. And not knowing the creature in Bird Box, or not understanding the origin of the creature, not understanding that stuff is a big reason, or not having that stuff explained to me is a big reason that I did not like Bird Box as much as everyone else. So again, it's related to my relationship with HP Lovecraft. The other book that I've talked about very recently at the beginning of the month, I don't have it right now. Hammers on Bone involves alien entities using human vessels. Think Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And it also involves a protagonist who admits to having something ancient inside of him. He's the human vessel of something ancient, an ancient god, an ancient deity, an ancient power. And the book is Hammers on Bone is book 1 of a 2-book duet, whatever. So not a lot is learned about the protagonist in Hammers on Bone. I don't know if in the second book if that is explored more, but based on the villain or the antagonist or the creatures that are using human vessels, and this protagonist having this ancient, mysterious, deity-like entity inside of him, that book is also very Lovecraftian. The difference is that I really liked that book. So it's not, I'm not in a position to say that I don't like all creature horror or all of Lovecraftian type of work. That's not true. Sometimes I do, and I can't really pinpoint when I will and when I won't. Specifically about H.P. Lovecraft, though, the things that I really like are the things that are most Poe-esque. The protagonists that write like they're giving you a report, like they're reporting to you events, like they're first person and they are almost clinically or scientifically reporting events and the effects or the circumstances. That is seen in Poe as well. as in Lovecraft. I think it's utilized a little bit more in HP Lovecraft, if I'm not mistaken. But it's even something very Sherlocky about it, you know? You cannot talk about horror for an entire month without talking about Edgar Allan Poe and HP Lovecraft. You just can't do it. And I've read way more Poe than I've read HP Lovecraft. It just doesn't call to me as much as Poe does. I mean, I have been reading this new anthology that I bought. In this particular book, we have The Rats in the Walls, Pickman's Model, The Color Out of Space, The Call of the Cthulhu, The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, The Dunwich Horror, The Shadow over Innsmouth, At the Mountains of Madness, The Shadow Out of Time, and The Hunter of the Dark. H.P. Lovecraft is very good at building suspense, especially at the ends of sections. That's something that I really appreciate about him as well. I just really like the narrators. I guess that's what it comes down to. When we're talking about Lovecraft, when we're talking about Edgar Allan Poe, I really like the narrators. I think for me, in a story or an author that talks mostly about subject matter that I'm not really drawn to, like creature horror, what saves it for me and what ends up making me enjoy it is the narrator. And I feel like that's true of Hammers on Bone as well. The narrator and the writing, like something about Bird Box held me back, but something about H.P. Lovecraft's narrators and writing and Cassandra Caw's narrators and her writing, it was very successful for me. It works for me. I can't say that every single one of these is a good time. This is not something I could read in a weekend. This is not something I could sit down and breeze right through. This is something that it'll probably take me 3 years to read. And the same is even true of Edgar Allan Poe. That stuff's not easy for me to read. I love it, but I don't read it very often. As a writer, I find what he's established as far as this cohesive universe or this cohesive ideology for generations of horror writers, I find that very impressive. It's kind of like Steven Spielberg. I appreciate H.P. Lovecraft the way that someone else might appreciate Steven Spielberg. You don't necessarily want to see every movie that he makes, but you can definitely appreciate what he's done for the film industry. Or classical music, for example. Who didn't have music appreciation at some point? Classical music is not something that I want to listen to every day. However, it's the root of so much music. You can't help but acknowledge its existence and acknowledge its importance to everything that came after it. So those are my thoughts on H.P. Lovecraft. These are just my thoughts. This is where I'm coming from as a horror reader, both with what I did last week with Edgar Allan Poe and this week with H.P. Lovecraft. I've talked to a lot of other booktubers or viewers who really enjoy H.P. Lovecraft or Lovecraftian literature. And I love hearing about how much they enjoy it. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know how much writers like Poe and Lovecraft have molded your tastes as a reader, and what you appreciate or don't appreciate about those two pioneers of horror. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon.